in this presentation just because I want to show the whole PowerPoint. I just think it works better that way. So as Christians, we're stewards of God's gifts, and it's our responsibility to manage and care for these resources wisely. Stewardship includes caring for the environment, right? God gave us this earth. We only get one earth. It's a good idea that we should take good care of it, not trash it up like we have been doing. God gives us our finances, and we are expected to take good care of our finances and not waste our money, because there are wise things we could be doing with our money. God wants us to take care of our families and our neighbors. He doesn't want us getting into our neighbor's business and being nosy, but at the same time, there is an element of looking out for our neighbors and taking, if we see our neighbor's child playing in the street, and the parent, for whatever reason, doesn't notice, it's up to us as adults to make sure the child doesn't get hurt, right? Stuff like that. Or, right? Okay. And this includes, stewardship includes the need to be ready for unforeseen challenges, because unforeseen challenges are going to happen. When God created Adam and Eve, placed them in the garden, God told them to be fruitful and multiply, to fill the earth and to subdue it. The word subdue is a strong word in the Hebrew, and it means to tame or master the earth. And he gave us dominion over the earth. Now, it doesn't mean we're the owners, but it does mean that we were placed in charge of the earth. That does come with the responsibility to care for the earth and its inhabitants. And the way I heard a rabbi once describe it would be like if your father built you a house, he would not mind if you put an addition to the house, or you put a swimming pool in the backyard of the house, or you put a deck to the house. That would be fine for you to modify the house to your likings, or to add on to it, or change it around some. Your father would mind if you started kicking holes in the walls, or tagging it with spray paint, or trashing it, right? It's the same thing when God made the planet for us. He doesn't mind for us to tend it and take care of it and maybe modify it. He does not want us to trash it or, quote unquote, kick holes in the walls. In addition to taking care of the earth and its inhabitants, we need to be prepared for unexpected challenges. There are some direct teachings in the Bible that talk about being prepared for future events. For example, Proverbs 6, verses 6 through 9. You can read this, but it says, talks about the ant being prepared, getting ready now for future events. It stores its provisions in the summer and gathers its food in the harvest, right? And that's an admonition to us to work diligently now so we can be ready for future events, right? There's some direct teachings in the Bible on that. And then there are some indirect teachings on this. In Luke 14, verses 28 through 30, Jesus is talking about the passage is primarily talking about Jesus addressing the importance of being fully committed to being one of his disciples. So when he says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower, won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation or not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. That's Luke 14, verses 28 through 30. Now, I don't want to use the passage out of context. Jesus was not, the primary purpose of this was not emergency preparedness or talking about preparing for future events or being diligent and hardworking, right? His purpose in talking about this was um, being fully committed and being ready to be one of his disciples. But he was approvingly quoting this concept to make his point. So he was approvingly citing this idea of, hey, everybody here knows if you're going to do something like this, you're going to count the cost ahead of time because we know this is a good idea. Same thing if you're going to be one of my disciples. Okay, so he's approvingly citing the idea. Okay, so, not wanting to quote Jesus out of context here, but you get the idea. So the Bible directly and indirectly teaches the idea of being ready for these events. Okay, oops. We also see it in Joseph's preparation for the famine in Egypt. I'm not going to read this to you, but in Genesis 41, verses 28 and so on, um, Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dream and tells him that there's going to be 7 years of plenty, but then 7 years of famine. Verse 47, Joseph is basically put in charge and he collects some of the abundance and lays it in store and stores it up in preparation for the famine that comes up. And he stores huge amounts and he becomes a logistics expert. Okay. And then verse 56, when the famine does spread over the whole country, he basically saves Egypt and saves his family and saves pretty much the world because, that he had laid aside ahead of time, from the time of plenty, he had laid aside some in store for when things went bad. So Joseph's wisdom in planning and organizing food storage during the years of plenty not only saved his family, but also saved the entire nation of Egypt, and also saved all the people around them because they might have had some gold or some silver or some valuables, but if you don't have food, you can't eat gold or silver, right? So the Bible teaches directly and indirectly to be prepared for unforeseen circumstances. And that's all based in the idea of proper stewardship. Okay. However, preparedness is not being frightened about the next bad thing to happen or constantly getting ready for the next earthquake or the next nuclear war. Preparedness is not running down to the gun store and buying a bunch of guns and ammo and body armor and MREs and stuff like that, because that's a pretty low probability event, right? Proper preparedness is developing resilience in your systems of support so you live a better life now when everything is going fine. And then if something does go wrong, you've got resources to get you through the tough times. A classic example is you save up money for a rainy day, right? That's what I'm talking about here. Okay. Well, what are your systems of support? Right? Let's see here. Your systems of support are, for example, food. You got to eat 3 times a day. Some of us eat 1 time a day. If you're one of those OMAD type people, 1 meal a day type people. Well, people who develop resilience in their systems of support, for example, might have a really deep food pantry. How does having a really deep food pantry entail preparedness or resilience in your systems of support? How does that mean you're having a better life now, even if nothing goes wrong? Well, if you have a really deep food pantry, if you finish a jar of peanut butter and you really like peanut butter, you don't have to replace the peanut butter right now. You've got 3 more jars of peanut butter. You can afford to wait until peanut butter's on sale. So when you have a deep pantry, you can afford to wait 2 weeks until the next great peanut butter sale or the next great sale on this or the next great sale on that. So you don't have to do just in time purchasing. You can afford to wait for the sales. That's how you save money right now and live better now with a deep food pantry. Plus, who doesn't like having a lot of food laying around, right? Okay. How about gardening? And first off, just gardening is good for you. Never mind the fact that you're growing fresh food. Just gardening, the activity of gardening is good for you. Secondly, growing your own food, fruits and vegetables is good for you, right? Because it's fresh fruit and vegetables. Secondly, gardening, having a garden is like printing your own money. You're saving money right there. Okay. Plus, having a deep food pantry and having a garden increases your resilience because if you lose your job, you've got a bunch of food. If you get sick, you got a bunch of food. If the old lady across the street who taught your kid how to play piano gets sick, you can walk over there with 3 grocery bags full of food and you could feed her and take care of her. And you haven't even put a dent in your food supplies. That's what I'm talking about, resilience in your systems of support. What are some other systems of support? Water, got to drink water, right? You can't go more than 3 days without water, otherwise, you're going to be dead. Security, right? I'm not talking about security guards. I'm talking about a safe place to live. You want to live in a safe neighborhood. The safety of your neighborhoods is more important than the locks on your doors, right? Energy or warmth, medical care. You want to have good medical care. You want to live in a country that takes care of your medical care, like Canada or the United Kingdom, or you want to work for a company that has good medical benefits or something along those lines, right? Shelter, you want to have your shelter taken care of, or you want to have 3 months living expenses saved up so you can afford to pay for your rent or your mortgage for at least 3 months to tide you through, right? That's what I'm talking about, why Christians should be preppers or preparedness. You want to have resilience in your systems of support, not necessarily buy 12 guns and 8,000 rounds of ammo and a bunch of body armor, but not have any food or health care. Okay. And I'm not anti firearms, I'm not anti ammo, but you're going to have to, I mean, you're going to have to eat 3 times a day. Do you really think you're going to survive 3 gunfights a day? Right? Let's be real. Okay. So again, don't want to quote Jesus out of context here, but Matthew chapter 7, 24 and 25. Therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who builds his house on the rock, and the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. What he's talking about primarily there in that passage are the people who actually do and follow his moral and spiritual teachings and not just give him lip service, right? Not everybody who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, right? He talks about that. Um, so I don't want to quote him out of context, but in addition to that, Christianity has practical things in it too, such as proper stewardship in our lives, stewardship of the resources that God has given us, right? And I want to end with this, both in our stewardship of things in our lives and also in our good deeds. I want to remind us all that it is our faith alone that saves us. Well, it's Jesus who saves us, right? Okay. It's not our faith that saves us, it's the object of our faith. It's Jesus who saves us. If you had faith in a totem pole, it ain't going to do you any good. Okay. But this is quoted from John Calvin. It is faith alone that saves, but the faith that saves is never found alone. And we want to be an ant, not a grasshopper, right? You want to, like the parable of the story of the ant and the grasshopper, we want to be an ant who prepares ahead of time for the hard times to come, not the grasshopper who doesn't prepare for things. And then when the hard times come, we end up, you know, perishing from the hard times. Anyway, that's it for now. I'd like it if you commented, liked, and subscribed. And I plan on developing this a lot further. There's a lot to be done on this, but I wanted to do this as an intro for why Christians in general and Seventh-day Adventists in particular should be involved in emergency preparedness, or primarily systems of support resiliency developing. Okay. And that's all for now. I'm not good at this closure stuff. Okay, then. Thank you very much. Bye.